Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Startup Creasphere APAC Batch 2 Expo today. And this is actually a huge milestone for us because since we started the program in Singapore during COVID, we have been running all of our events virtually right up to yesterday. And today, for the first time, we have an in-person audience joining us today. So thank you for being part of this milestone. And as you know, this expo is part of our Plug and Play APAC Summit, and we are actually using Brella as a networking app. So if you registered for our event, you should have received an email to download Brella. All you need to do is to set up your account via the email, and you'll be able to connect with the other attendees, as well as the startups who are present at the APAC Summit. Yep, so just to introduce myself, I'm Rin Hua. I'm part of the founding team of the Creasphere program in Singapore. I'm currently overseeing the Startup Creasphere program, as well as our financial services programs. And for this 1 hour expo, you can expect to hear from our corporate partner, Roche, on the meaning of Creasphere for them. We will be having our 3 program startups to pitch and present their solutions to us. And we will also be having a panel discussion on accelerating open innovation in healthcare. So for those of you who might be new to Plug and Play and what we do, we actually started out as an early stage VC, and we are currently still doing investments ranging from pre-seed to pre-series A round, and with ticket size ranging from 50K to 150K USD. On the other hand, we also run startup accelerator programs. So Creasphere being an example of this. And these are basically programs where startups do not need to pay any fee or equity to join us. And it's also a stage agnostic program. So these are opportunities for startups to get to meet our corporate partners. And this really goes in line with our third pillar, which is our corporate innovation arm. We're helping corporates, so MNCs like Roche, for example, helping them to accelerate their innovation strategies internally through startup collaborations and other means. So we do operate in a wide range of verticals, not just for health, but other adjacent verticals such as insurance, financial services, sustainability, etc. So this really allows our corporate partners to access adjacent industries. So like, for example, a health MSc looking at insurance and vice versa. So this really allows for more collaboration opportunities. And this also allows our startups to explore different industries. So we do launch new verticals regularly. So our newest vertical is actually crypto and digital assets. So it's really allowing our network to look at new industry trends. And we do operate in a wide range of countries as well. So this really allows our corporate partners to look at startups globally, and also allowing our startups to look for global expansion through our Plug and Play network. And for Plug and Play APAC, we are currently operating in different countries such as Bangkok, Manila, Jakarta, and Taipei. So Singapore is our Plug and Play HQ, and we do have different programs. So other than Startup Creasphere, I'm sure you have seen some of the other expos like financial services, GIA, and we do have other partnerships such as with Meta for their NP investment program. And Go is basically our market access program. So we're working together with governments to help startups to expand to different countries. And we do have corporate partners other than Roche. We also have Visa, MSIG. We have Nippon Life, which is also one of our newest partners here. And moving into our health vertical. So we started our Plug and Play health vertical in 2015. And in 2018, we started our Startup Creasphere program together with Roche in Munich. So in 2020, Roche wanted to expand the program to Singapore. And that's why we launched the Startup Creasphere program here. And we are actually moving beyond Munich and Singapore. So for this year, we actually just started our first 2 batches of Startup Creasphere in Silicon Valley, which is our HQ. We do have 5 partners globally for Creasphere. So you can see their logos here. And combined across all of the 3 different offices, we have currently run 15 batches and accelerated 107 startups. Looking at our Singapore program, we're currently into our 3rd batch. So this is a snapshot of our first 2 batches. We have looked at focus areas such as diabetes care, women's fertility, ophthalmology, and more. So as you can see, our startups are stage agnostic. We're looking at all kinds of startups and also startups from all around APAC and beyond. So the unique thing about the Startup Creasphere program, even among all of Plug and Play's programs, is that all startups which are selected into the program will run a co-creation project together with our corporate partner, Roche. So for example, Looking at our current batch, we have 3 startups across different focus areas: behavioral healthcare, liver disease management, and digital pathology. So all of these startups have actually been working together with Roche for the past 3 months on a co-creation project. So looking at various focus areas, different markets, etc. So these are the startups which you'll be hearing presenting later. And for now, I would like to introduce Alfred, who is from Roche. Yeah.
Thank you. Hi. Right. Very good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to Startup Creasphere 2022. My name is Alfred. I'm the Innovation Manager at Roche Diagnostics and also the new Startup Creasphere Program Manager. Right. So Startup Creasphere actually started in Asia Pacific in 2020. Right. We had a very simple vision at that time. We wanted to be able to foster innovation in APAC and also accelerate the commercialization of what's going on here, because we're convinced at the time that this is really a region that has enormous potential. Not only do we see that APAC is emerging as a research powerhouse and an innovation powerhouse globally, but also we recognize that this part of the world represents more than 60% of the world population, right? So there is a lot of interest for us, not just to foster innovation, but also accelerate them and accelerate the adoption of this innovation in this part of the world. Since 2020 and for a few years now, we have been focusing a lot on COVID-19, right? A lot of resources, a lot of attention have been gone to COVID-19, but I think it's clear to us that healthcare is more than COVID-19. If you think about the pandemic, this is a pandemic that's happening under the backdrop of an aging population. We're talking about a pandemic that is happening against a backdrop of rising chronic diseases, and also greater interest from patients for better quality healthcare, right? So if we look into the future, it's clear to us that healthcare is going to be more patient-centric, is going to be more data-driven, and is going to be more value-driven. And for us to address these challenges and help us transform healthcare, we need to work with partners. And Startup Creasphere is one of the platforms for us to do that, right? So today, we are going to hear from the 3 startups. I also want to take this opportunity to give thanks to the Global Creasphere Program Coordinator, Matthias, Shin as well, who has been running the Startup Creasphere this year, the pilot owners, as well as those who have supported us in this journey, right? So I'm really excited to hear the pitches and listen to the panel discuss what it means for them in terms of open innovation and how to accelerate it. Take this opportunity, engage with our startups today, engage with our panel, and together accelerate the commercialization and adoption of healthcare innovation in APAC. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alfred. And we will be moving on to our startup pitches. So for our first startup, unfortunately, they are not able to join us in person as they're currently based in Taiwan. Ether AI develops web-based digital pathology workflow systems and diagnostic support solutions powered by AI. So we have Adam Yen, who is the Business Development Director for Ether AI, to share with us more.
It's my pleasure to be here. I'm very glad to have this opportunity to share Ether AI's experience in the field of digital pathology and AI. My name is Adam Yen. I'm the Business Development Director of Ether AI. My experience focuses specifically on hospital digitalization and AI adoption in the field of radiology, hematology, and pathology. Ether AI was founded in October 2015 by Dr. Zhou Ye. Currently, we have the largest digital pathology market share in Taiwan and over 70 employees in our company. We have developed strong partnerships with medical centers and business partners across the world. Half of Taiwan's medical centers are using Ether AI system or partnering with us. We are also spreading our business tentacles to Europe and Japan markets. Most of our products are software as medical devices. We have the manufacturing license and established our quality management system with ISO certification. At the same time, most of our products received medical device licenses in different regions. One unique technology developed by us is the Gigapixel AI technologies, which is a weekly supervised and annotation-free training method. It can support pathologists to generate tailor-made AI models in daily workflow. Such technology has been published in multiple journals like Nature Communications and Modern Pathology. We have 3 AI product lines in pathology, hematology, and gastroenterology. Ether AI Hema and Endo are our standalone AI products. And the Ether slide is our flagship product. It has TFDA and CE mark for clinical diagnosis by providing whole slide image management and viewing. We provide comprehensive AI apps to support pathologists for daily work and research purpose. One of our AI apps is Ether AI Lymph Node, which is a lymph node metastasis detection application for colorectal and gastric cancer. In our previous research publication on Nature Communications, AI can help pathologists to improve the sensitivity of micrometastasis around 50%. With our seamless integration with EtherSlide, the reading time could be saved 30% on average. And immunotherapy is one of the popular topics in cancer treatment. The diagnostic criteria relies on precise quantification of IHC biomarkers. Ether AI IHC AI app provides real-time counting tool for most widely used antibodies for breast cancer, including Ki-67, ER, PR, and HER2. One of our digital pathology AI system showcase is Chang'an Memorial Hospital. This is the biggest private hospital group in Taiwan. 5 hospitals with 2 medical centers are using our system for digitizing all their cases every day. It forms a tremendous database and grows with 3 terabytes per day. The other showcase is National Taiwan University Hospital, which is the top 1 public hospital in Taiwan. We help them to implement our EtherSlide for both pathology and hematology departments. Our digital pathology solution has also been adapted by the overseas medical centers. The Tübingen University Hospital, which is ranked in the top 5 medical centers, and National University Hospital in Germany, is implementing our EtherSlide and AI apps for clinical reading. The project scope is huge, including digitalization across 5 departments in 3 different locations. Ether AI is dedicated to developing solutions for the AI-powered diagnostic support, starting from case reception to report sign-off. We can foresee that AI comes into play during the whole patient journey to elevate the standard of diagnosis and improve the quality of care. We are in the beginning of the AI era in pathology. I'm personally very lucky to have the opportunity to join this journey. Thank you for having me today.
So next we have Intellect, which is working together with Roche on behavioral healthcare. So Intellect is a digital mental health company that provides mental health care and well-being support to employees and individuals. We have Theodoric Chiu, who is the co-founder and CEO of Intellect, to share with us more. Theodoric, please.
Great. Well, thanks for having me and appreciate the introduction to the session. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Theodoric Chiu. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Intellect. I'm very glad to actually be working with Plug and Play and Roche to share a bit more about what we do at Intellect in behavioral healthcare. So to begin with, Intellect is a mental health care company. We have developed and created a comprehensive set of mental health solutions to provide end-to-end care for any level of mental health need and support there. Over the last few years, we have grown and scaled exponentially. Today, we serve 3 million lives and work with many leading employers to actually provide comprehensive care no matter where anyone is. as I just briefly introduced, my name is Doric Chu. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Intellect, and it's a pleasure to be here. So this slide briefly and succinctly covers the background of who we are today. As I briefly shared earlier, today we're happy to share that we have grown and scaled across the APAC region. Intellect Solutions doesn't just cover Singapore, but actually about every part of Asia Pacific. We have got a strong network of professionals and localized care for mental health care. We've scaled quite a fair amount as well. So as I shared earlier, we today serve over 3 million members and primarily work with corporates, employees, and their families as well to provide the care and support needed across the board. In the bottom half, you can see that this is a not exhaustive list of clients we service across the region today. We are trusted and work with some of the largest companies, from multinationals to tech unicorns, traditional blue-collar workforces, and many, many more as well. And we have essentially grown and built a very strong grasp of the industry and different demographic needs for mental health care. And we have the pleasure today to not just be the largest in terms of traction, but to have the backing of some of the world's largest investors, including Tiger Global, Y Combinator, Insignia, and many, many other great investors as well. And the last thing that's very relevant for the group here is that we invest heavily in our science and research since day one, with a robust clinical team and clinical research subset as well that covers and have published multiple studies today that showcases efficacy and ROI on mental health in the daily lives of people. So this just briefly covers the fact that we raised a healthy Series A couple of months early this year, which puts us at the forefront to really grow and scale mental health care for the region, something that is heavily needed, but quite lacking as it stands today. I'll read through the slides, but as I mentioned, we work with different universities, healthcare institutions to basically drive research, and we've proven efficacy in a number of our programs across mental health care today. And the last thing before I move to the solution, essentially it's that we look at mental health care on a spectrum from very proactive needs all the way towards everyday stresses and clinical care. We believe that fundamentally the bulk of the historical view of mental health care is quite skewed and actually not reflective of the reality. Many people are not in just the clinical need of the spectrum, but heavily in the moderate and high stress, as well as the healthy range of things. And that's where we really have built a very comprehensive solution to tackle this. And one of the last pieces I'll touch on is on what Intellect fundamentally does. Intellect has built a comprehensive end-to-end mental health care system that covers different pillars of needs, from proactive healthcare through self-guided programs on the left side, live virtual care with behavioral health coaches, as well as a very comprehensive clinical suite of experts on the clinical end of spectrum. So any level of care and need someone may have, be it upstream or downstream, Intellect can effectively and comprehensively provide the care anytime, anywhere. And one of the big strengths we've built today is that our services in mental health care isn't just in English and in Singapore. We have scaled to cover pretty much all of Asia Pacific, localized our platform in over 10 languages, and we have native mental health professionals in close to 30 countries today. So effectively, high quality of care anywhere in the region. And I won't go through all of the depth here, but we work with corporates a fair amount. So a lot of the care we provide covers also how we support organizations, analytics, reports, and market-leading utilization and activity rate as well. All right, let's breeze through the folk. So one of the key things that our strategic partnerships team actually does, and in collaboration with Plug and Play and Roche, is actually how can we further beyond corporates our efforts across 4 key sectors within healthcare, education, community, and hospitality as well. And we've made great strides here, working with different leading organizations to further efforts that we do. And without further ado, so this gives a brief overview of what Intellect does. We'll be happy to chat and meet with different partners or investors. Thanks a lot for having us here today.
Thank you, Doric. And next we have Mesh Bio, which is a startup working together with Roche on liver disease management. So Mesh Bio is a health intelligence platform focusing on chronic disease management, looking at care delivery, data science, and predictive analytics. So we have Dr. Andrew Wu, who is the co-founder and CEO of Mesh Bio, to share more. Andrew, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Roche and Plug and Play. I'm Andrew, co-founder and CEO of Mesh Bio, and I'll be sharing how our health intelligence platform really enables and brings preventative, personalized care to healthcare providers, really transforming patient experiences. Human metabolic disease is a global health problem, right? There are almost 18 million deaths a year from cardiovascular disease. This is 27% of annual deaths. Diabetes costs us close to $1 trillion. And much of this is due to complications like heart and kidney failure in these patients. This increasing prevalence of chronic disease also increases complexity of care. Doctors are very overworked, especially as we know because of COVID, and sometimes struggle to find the right time, enough time to keep up with the latest advances in medical knowledge. Also, because of our pandemic, consumers are very much aware about their health now. They're certainly much more educated. How many of you knew what was PCR before the pandemic, right? And we certainly want better healthcare experiences. Governments and insurers are also very concerned about the rising costs from chronic disease and are really putting a lot of pressure, Healthier SG, on healthcare providers to deliver more cost-effective care. MeshBio is trying to address these challenges by enabling personalized preventative healthcare at scale. And this is with our health intelligence platform, Dara. Dara seamlessly integrates with health IT systems, drawing in multidimensional data, such as lab results, diagnostics, and imaging. Our analytics engine codifies clinical best practices so that doctors can easily leverage the knowledge of the global community and not have to spend hours and days memorizing clinical papers. Our engine assesses patients and generates insights that will direct patients to the next steps of their care journey, interventions that best suit their needs at that point in time, such as adjusting medication, follow-up diagnostics, tests, or procedures. With Dara, healthcare providers can shift to a fully digital workflow, such as patients can actually complete their health history through digital means. Our real-time dashboard actually tracks the completion of data and health screening packages. Our analytics engine combines gold standard risk scores with clinical best practices. This engine is able to assess a patient and quantify the key contributors to a patient's disease risk so that patients and individuals can understand how their life choices today are going to impact their health future. Underneath the hood of this analytics engine is a transparent clinical logic tree that covers thousands of clinical scenarios, right? This is explainable and builds trust with doctors and healthcare providers. After a patient's results have been analyzed, our system is able to automatically generate personalized recommendations for a patient's clinical intervention or lifestyle changes for the doctor's review. This saves up to 90% of time for doctors, removing the need for them to have to manually type out patient reports. When all the results are ready, the report is very quickly generated in under a minute. The doctor will then walk through with the patient and guide them in the next steps of their care journey. We're very thankful to be working with the healthcare providers in Singapore. More than 80,000 patients have now been assessed through our platform. 20 medical groups in Singapore are now relying on Dara for patient assessment and care delivery. We are now expanding across Southeast Asia. We continue to serve medical groups providing health screening and medical checkup services, and are now expanding into chronic disease management for indications such as diabetes, kidney disease, and heart disease. We aim to help doctors identify patients that are high risk, that are likely to develop complications such as renal failure or stroke, and to guide their care in order to improve patient outcomes. In summary, this rising burden of chronic disease really increases the complexity of patient care. Personalized preventative health is critical to addressing these challenges, and MeshBio's Dara platform enables such care delivery to be delivered at scale. Ultimately, it's about improving patient experiences and outcomes. We're really excited about the opportunity to transform healthcare together with all of you today. Do reach out to find out how we could work more together. And once again, thanks to Roche and Plug and Play for this opportunity.
Thank you, Andrew. And before we move on to the panel, I would just like to share with you that you're able to connect with our startups if you like. So not to worry, this QR code will be shown again at the end of the event. But if you like, you can quickly scan this. It will lead you to a type form and you'll be able to fill in which startups you'd like to be connected with, as well as your contact details. And we'll be in touch with you after the event. So I'll just give a few seconds for those who are scanning it. Okay. Yep. For the rest, we'll show this again later. And now for the panel. So we have heard from different perspectives. We have heard from Roche about their open innovation strategies. We have heard from the startups as well. And now we really want to see about how different stakeholders can come together to accelerate open innovation in healthcare. So I'd like to pass it on to Pei Ling, who is the APAC Innovation and Partnering Manager at Roche. She's moderating the panel and she'll introduce the panelists.
Yeah, so thanks Yunhua and Plug and Play for this event today. So very excited to meet everyone. And as you have heard from Alfred, our Roche commitment towards open innovation is really where we want to drive towards. And today we are very happy to have our panelists here to see how might we work together to accelerate commercialization of innovation. And we have specifically picked ecosystem stakeholders to really hear different perspectives, their learnings, and what are some of the pointers they will want to share with us if we really truly want to accelerate our efforts together to commercialize innovation. So we have seen the two startup co-founders, so I will just introduce them up to have a sit with us, Theodoric and Andrew. Yeah. And then we have Pauline from NHIC, National Health Innovation Center. Yeah. Yes, correct. And we have Chris from Pure Land Ventures, one of our investors. So maybe I'll just pass them the mic first to kind of give a little introduction of yourself before I moderate the session. Yes, Pauline, ladies first.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Pauline. Nice to be here. Thank you very much to Plug and Play and Roche for this opportunity. And also thank you very much to the startup pitchers. I'm from the National Health Innovation Center. So this is a government-linked entity that works with the hospitals in Singapore to develop and commercialize innovations. So we do this, of course, with innovations from within the hospital, as well as innovations from outside, bringing them in. So it's very exciting for me to be here, to be meeting this larger innovation community, and of course, some familiar faces and new faces. Thank you.
And then to Chris.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Chris Hardesty, so I'm a partner of Pure Land Venture, which is a Singapore-based healthcare venture capital firm. It's a seeds capital firm, which means we are part of the Enterprise Singapore kind of batch for biomedical sciences. So a lot of our investments are matched by the Singapore government as well. And most of our portfolio is in the area of kind of software as a medical device, meaning hardware software combinations, although we have explored some other areas too, and have been collaborating with Roche and some other stakeholders, which has been quite exciting. So thanks.
Thanks. So I see we have a pretty cozy setting here today. So I will start off with a few questions for our panelists, but whoever is on stage in the room with us, feel free to come and ask us questions at the end of the day. So it's really cozy. So feel free to share with us any questions you have in mind. So to kick it off, I will actually first ask the two co-founders that we have today, right? How is your experience in the past when it comes to partnerships, and what are some of your learnings when it comes to partnership towards commercialization? I'm actually looking at Andrew first because we had pretty much a lot of interactions. So we'd like Andrew to share his sharings.
Yeah, I think one thing that we learned is as a small early stage startup, working together with a global giant like Roche, right? 100-year-old company needs quite a lot of reframing of our understanding and mindset, and really understanding how global giants like Roche actually operate. Right? And what does value actually mean? How the organizations are structured, and more importantly, how to navigate the engagement to the right sort of stakeholder in order to articulate or even explore opportunities for us to work together. So we first got to know Roche in 2019. It was before the pandemic. It's been a fascinating journey for both of us, actually. And I think one of the key learnings we took was that startups and corporates move at different speeds. And a startup has to keep moving forward, and the corporate will move at a speed that fits for them. And if the synergies are not right at that point in time, it doesn't mean that the synergies will not be present in the future, right? It's also to be patient and just hold true to your mission and your vision and just keep moving forward, right? Continue to serve your key stakeholders, your clients. And when there is an alignment of interests, that's when conversations, well, we've been privileged to have conversations continue and revive, and it's been great so far. And as such a large corporate, I'm really thankful that they have been so kind to even engage with us at an early stage and continue the discussion. So yeah.
Thanks, Andrew. I think internally we have a term where we love our startups to death whenever we find that convergence points. But thanks for sharing. So, Theodoric, your side.
Yeah, so building off Andrew's point, so I think there's definitely a lot of strategic value and benefit in startups working with larger corporates as well. On our part, just to give a bit of perspective, so we actually work with corporates in programs like this with Plug and Play and Roche. We also have strategic investors on board that are usually very large conglomerates that have alignment in the industry and sector that we're in. So I think one of the key things here, and touching a bit on what Andrew shared, it's the scale and speed and the areas where startups complement larger companies. Large companies have a very large scale, reach, and distribution channel. Startups have the agility to actually build quite rapidly in a lot more specific angles that large companies may not have as their core priority at the start, at least, but see a strategic value in partnering or building this themselves. So I think that's where the complementary fit comes in. There are naturally complexities to work through, but I think overall, there's really good fit if there is an angle that a company, a large conglomerate, could actually have and find that alignment with a startup that actually is tackling that space there. So in that regard, when the right fit is actually found, it actually is really, really beneficial to distribute at that scale.
Right. Thanks, Theodoric. So for the same question, I'm going to direct it to Chris because he comes from the investor side. I'm curious, right? Based on your experience with the startups and their experience in partnerships, what are some of the learnings that you observed? Of course, drawing connections with what they have shared. And also, based on your experience, what are some of the things that we really need to be mindful of when startups wants to go into commercial partnerships beyond just MNCs, right? It could be other forms of commercial partnerships.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, really kudos to Roche because, I think the word ecosystem gets thrown around a lot. You can hear it every day, but it's different when you intentionally and structurally run an ecosystem. And that's exactly what they've done, because that takes guts to bring uncommon bedfellows together. And it also takes guts to do initiatives that may not even be core to their business model today. So you'll find that oftentimes that's where the difference is between people that really do ecosystems versus those who talk about it. So I think it's been a fun journey. Not everybody always agrees, but that's part of the process, right? I think, two learnings for me so far working with Roche and then bringing the startups kind of into the picture as well. So one is, and it's important to me because even outside of the investments, I work a lot with governments on their financing, strategies for their health systems. We really have to move in the direction of travel of where healthcare is going, So, we don't tend to get involved in startup companies or early stage companies that are not moving in the direction of travel of healthcare. And so if that means that their, business model is overly reliant on out-of-pocket expenditures, for example, or, they're not trying to go the regulated route, oftentimes we don't necessarily get involved, in those situations. So I think it's important to, to move in the direction of travel of the healthcare companies there. The other thing, and I think was raised too, is just the pace aspect. So where I think still some work needs to be done potentially is, I fully believe in the regulated route and taking the right procedures in healthcare, but equally for startups to wait, sometimes 3 to 6 months, a year to be deployed, that can mean their life, right? So I do think we need to move a little bit faster. I think the last thing I would say that sometimes gets underestimated in working in these partnerships is a lot of times a corporate may be seen as a source of technical expertise or maybe a source of money. Sometimes they look at corporates like that, but I really think the soft skills opportunity of working with corporates gets overlooked too, because I think we've done some nice things with mentorship of startups, of really mapping out the kind of patient pathways and stuff that Roche knows. And that's extremely valuable and helpful as well. So yeah, a few of my thoughts there.
Thanks. So then I'm gonna direct to Pauline then, because for NHIC, I think you guys also have a good perspective of startups trying to gain clinical adoption. I'm just curious to hear from your experience and some of the learnings that you guys have been through there in that journey. Yeah.
Thanks, Pei-Ling. This is really a very good learning experience for us as well. So I guess the National Healthcare Innovation Center, we've also worked, whilst we represent the government, we've worked quite a lot with clinician innovators as well as companies, startups and venture capital. I think one of the learnings with agility and everything and us wanting to push things fast, right? There are, concerns that both parties have to consider. So really, oftentimes in many countries, government represents like regulatory requirements. And same thing as what Andrew says, when these requirements converge is when you can finally see like a leapfrog in, like hospitals and all wanting to adopt technology. Why do they do this? They do this because it is always in like a clinical organization's mandate to ensure patient safety. So that's always number one, regardless of how open they are, how fast they will always be concerned about the patient first. And rightfully so, right? Because if no one's looking after the patient and everyone's just caring about commercializing, making money, then at the end of the day, what happens to, if something happened to the patients, then who would bear that liability? So that's sometimes the reason why, things may appear slower than they ought to. But I agree that in us trying to engage private sector a little bit more, it's also in understanding what are some of the roadblocks we can help to smoothen, right? If say startups hit a brick wall, what is that with regards to? Because sometimes the concerns are really not concerns, right? It might be in the, because things were done in a certain way in the past, and it might be archaic. And if agencies like ourselves can help to smoothen the process, unlock some of the policies and rewrite some of the policies to enable the adoption of new innovations, that would actually help. As what Chris says, beyond funding, right? Because oftentimes people also look at the government and the large hospitals as a source of funding. Yes and no, right? You can throw all the money, at the startups, but if they hit that policy and process roadblock, no amount of funds can solve that. So I think that's part of the learning, where actually openness and transparency is probably the most important in partnerships. Just tell your partner what is the issue, right? And then we'll solve it together. Yeah.
Thanks, Pauline. So maybe another question, right? And we talk about the learnings that we have been through. What about some of the opportunities that you see coming, right, in the next 1 year that we should totally leverage on if we really want to accelerate the commercialization and adoption of clinical innovation?
Thanks for reminding me, Pei-Ling. I almost forgot to say this.
Oh, really? I actually wanted to direct it to the co-founders, but feel free to say what you want to say.
Sorry, but maybe before they go ahead, just to let everyone know, so we mentioned, I mentioned that we're trying very hard to enable adoption of new innovations, whether it's from large companies or startups. So recently we opened this, what we call a Clinical Innovation and Adoption Initiative that comes with a little grant, but with more the intention to help to, iron out some of these policies that will enable adoption of new innovations. So we've just opened one of the grants this month. It's on screening. So many of these new innovations that can assist with diagnostics, decentralized patient care, can come apply for it. You can work with the public hospitals, and I hope that with this grant, it will enable the hospitals to be a little bit more open and to work with startups on new innovations to create clinical validation data that is necessary for the startups and companies to roll out their new products and services.
Yeah, thanks, Pauline. So maybe to Andrew and to Doric, right? Any new opportunities that you really want to leverage on next?
So I think there are definitely a lot of sector-specific nuances and scenarios we played out here. But when we look at from a sector agnostic perspective of partnerships between a startup and a larger company, I think a few key things are areas that we usually look at, right? One key thing is how can you leverage the scale and the distribution of the larger company. Say, for example, a company like ourselves, how can we partner with a hospital to distribute our services in a way that complements their own at a much larger reach? That's one example. Another example would likely be how can we leverage their existing IP and technology and expertise as well. For a conglomerate like Roche, there's a lot of expertise they would have that small startups can actually partner and leverage on. And that's a key aspect that we see oftentimes being the angles. And there are definitely a lot more other ways as well. But usually it's how, in a mutually beneficial way, a startup can leverage on a larger company's scale, expertise, and distribution. And how can these larger companies leverage on a speed and more niche focus that they themselves do not have a core focus at the moment. So that's how, in a more principled approach, I would typically look at it.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm going to take a slightly different perspective, a slightly different topic to talk about. So as I just presented, we're very much focused on the personalized preventative health, right? And we started on this like journey back in 2018, 2019, when we founded the company, we had no inkling that MOH was going to move towards this value-based healthcare capitated model that was announced earlier this year. So this, I mean, firstly, complete kudos to MOH and the government for taking such a bold step, right? I mean, many countries have tried and have tried to implement some level of value-based healthcare. But Singapore is going to do this in a big fell swoop and set up all the incentives and even the not just on a ministry level, but also on an agency level and even on an insurance level is absolutely amazing. That's an area that we're really excited about, right? A lot of this journey for me really started with being a caregiver and being a son and seeing the healthcare challenges that my parents went through, right? Healthcare systems historically being structured as reacting to situations, will react when you get kidney disease, will react when you get stroke, will react when you get heart attack. As our populations get older, it's absolutely critical to think long term. And Singapore has the very unique, I guess, socio-political environment to actually think long term, right? And the fact that we're reforming our healthcare systems to think long term, think about prevention, think about personalization, think about the importance of primary care, right? As critical stakeholders in a citizen's health journey, is really exciting to me, not just as an entrepreneur and an innovator, but as a citizen, right? As someone who will be requiring, touch wood not so soon, but will be requiring healthcare services and care not so long in the future. So yeah.
Right. Thanks. So maybe to Chris, right, in view of the long-term opportunities that's to come, how does this affect your judgment when you invest in startups in view of all these opportunities that's coming?
Yeah, I mean, there are, of course, different types of investors out there, so you can't lump them all into one bucket, but at least our fund is what would be considered patient capital, and being healthcare focused by nature, we'll take a longer term view, which is good. Because even, here we're talking about kind of digital health, med tech, but if you get into some other areas like biotechnology, I mean, we're talking 5, 7, 10 years, before some of these things reach the market. So you do have to take a long-term view. And that's where also I think it's important that whatever we do, we're aligned to the direction of travel of where the governments are trying to go with their health systems. And maybe that's just a matter of principle of some funds like our funds, but that's very important to us. And I can give you a great example, because one thing to me about innovation in healthcare is it's good to have ambition about radical transformation and stuff, but I think incremental innovation in healthcare is also perfectly fine and well needed. And you see a lot of ideas like appointment booking tools and just simple stuff, honestly, that we really need. I was at a government competition last week, which is run by the ASEAN Health Secretariat, and a big agenda item for their governments and many governments is healthy aging. There's the WHO's Decade of Healthy Aging program that's being rolled out. So they had a whole innovation competition on healthy aging. And the idea that won was it was a Japanese company, and they create a QR code sticker that goes on the fingernails of older people with dementia, because currently, you know, they wear pendants and wearables, but those things can be taken off, whereas the sticker on the fingernail will last for 2 weeks and can't be removed, you know. So, and then you scan the QR code and you get all that person's information. So, I mean, that's nothing even radical, but just so incredibly useful and relevant, right? And that idea won the whole competition. So that's where I think, in terms of looking at the attractiveness of ideas, part of it is just how it aligns to where we're going and just the simplicity of it too. Yeah.
So I think that that's a good segue to my last question, and that's, when we talk about startup Creasphere, it's actually an accelerator program. What are some of the key ingredients that you think needs to go into the program so that we could really accelerate innovation, even the ones that you mentioned that's not radical, but what are some of the key ingredients that needs to be there so that we could truly accelerate those?
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to mention earlier, and it relates to this question too, but I think this idea of a patient-centric world and leveraging on healthcare literacy of people is great, and it's definitely something we need to do, more relevant in some disease areas than others. But it's just my own personal view in looking at the scalability and viability of innovation, that we have to work in these B2B or B2G or B2B2B, whatever is the model, you know. So I think all three of the pitches that you saw earlier were exactly along this train of thought. And you know, you see some innovator companies that get there sooner than others. A lot of them, we're working with one that we invested in that is remote patient monitoring for people who've had knee surgery, right? And basically, it's sensor devices that the patients can wear in their home, and instead of having to go to the physio for all the rehab, they can do the exercises at home, and the data signals get sent back to the doctors and stuff. And initially the way to scale it up was to go out there like a traditional sales rep and sell to surgeons and patients and stuff. But nowadays all the big knee implant companies are the ones who want to partner with the device, because if someone has knee implant surgery and then that manufacturer wants to be able to track how well their knee implant is doing and have that data to talk to their customers, the hospitals and stuff too, it just makes a lot more sense in terms of scale up. So I think one thing is people coming into the accelerator programs, understanding that there's a pivot there from trying to sell everything or commercialize everything yourself to being willing to work with other partners. I think the only thing I would say, and I said it earlier, but people talk all the time about how attractive an investment is based on the tech, but also on the team. And that's just where working with companies like Roche has so much opportunity in terms of mentorship, tapping onto team resources that you may not have, local sales reps, manufacturing capabilities. And sometimes I do see founders or startup teams that just kind of can't get out of their own way, right? So if you can have that type of mindset of, I'm going into this to improve my tech and commercialization, but also my team, I think you can get a lot of benefit out of these programs.
Thanks. I'll direct the questions to the two co-founders who have been through similar programs.
Sure. So the question is around what's important.
Yes. What's a key ingredient for an accelerator program?
So I think I can share from my point of view, one being that ourselves and like we've been through an accelerator before, YC in the US, and then I've worked at myself in a venture builder as well that had a similar goal. When we look at the accelerator, the goal is essentially to help incubate and quickly accelerate the growth of companies, usually at an earlier stage, to get to a point or go from there. So there are naturally different stages and sector focus of these different types of accelerators, but I think fundamentally that's pretty critical in terms of how can we get companies not just going through a motion of education, but also making sure they are progressing with actionable metrics and targets in these programs as well. So we've had the privilege to go through YC, and I think one of the key things that we really like in that program is that there are very actionable targets and metrics that the partners, the folks working with the companies and startups actually drive home. It's not only on the surface, but they go deeper into digging why, if this thing is not growing, what's actually going wrong. Is it a product point of view? Is it a funnel point of view or stuff there? So I think what's quite critical, drawing back to a more actionable piece there, is actually having experts, people, and operators in these accelerator programs that have the operator expertise or industry knowledge to actually support the companies either to grow or to further develop their tech or IP, essentially. So that's one of the things that I would say is pretty critical.
I guess our experience is quite different from programs like YC. I guess what we've enjoyed and learned a lot from in the past is being part of participating in very focused programs. You know, there's this adage, right? Like fail fast. I think if you're going to make a mistake, make it early, and accelerator programs can be an opportunity to win fast, but also fail fast, right? And I think what enables this quick experimentation is commitment, both from the organizer of the acceleration program and also from the partners and also from the startup, right? Be very clear about what's the question you're trying to answer, be it from a go-to-market perspective, product market fit perspective, product feature set perspective, or even something as fundamental as, are my assumptions of market pain points correct, right? So having an acceleration programs tend to be quite short, so you can't boil the ocean in a couple of months. So being very focused and targeted in our experience has been key, so that you kind of don't run around, like startups tend to run around like headless chickens, right? Because everything is shiny, everything someone want to do, but be focused, and I think that's what's worked well. Yeah.
So one last question to Pauline before I open up the questions to the floor. Same question, but with a slight nuance. Like what Andrew mentioned, right? It's not like all types of innovations could be put into accelerator program because it's just the nature of it. What are your thoughts, right? What type of innovation could go into an accelerator program and truly benefit from it?
Yeah, so I don't think I'm going to be able to give like a one problem statement, but the process of it, right? I think it's really important really to identify, as what Andrew said, a problem statement you can solve and you want the accelerator to help you solve, because an accelerator cannot accelerate your work if you're not sure what you want. And it works both ways, right? So if partners wanting to work with the accelerator to reach out to the startups going into it, they have to also know what they want from the startups. As I mentioned previously, it's about openness and transparency. So it's really okay to say what you don't want, right? Because as what Andrew says, I mean, the startup has so many opportunities, but if you like a larger corporation that goes in there confuses them more than what they had in mind before they join the startup, it's not going to be useful at all. And then to Chris's point about B2B, B2C, whatever, I think it's M to M, like many to many, right? Because like say Creasphere or Y Combinator, they may not be the only accelerator that provides all the answers to the startup, right? And it's okay. Like you don't have to do everything to be the accelerator. You can possibly just connect with others that you know that can help a startup, right? Beyond maybe the capabilities of whatever that program is. And I do also have, so this is maybe a bit contrary to what you guys think. You think the acceleration program is a very fixed program. I think that's how the ecosystem have sort of like nurtured you to think that. But I've seen a lot of so-called programs or organizations that are very successful because they follow on to assist the startups after they've grown. That means after the fixed program, if there was one, they still continue after that, right? Like they know venture capital, or they know larger corporations, and they continue to connect them. And it doesn't just end there after the 3 weeks or 8 weeks. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Pauline, for sharing that. So now I'll actually open the questions to the floor. Anyone has any questions for our panelists here? If not, I actually need info support for Slido questions because I realized I left my iPad there. If there's any questions online that we have for our panelists.
Yeah, so I'll help to read out a question from Slido. How can early stage health startups make a convincing case for funding, given how capital intensive the healthcare founding process is when compared to fintech?
Maybe it's a question for Chris.
I mean, there is talk now of this kind of investment winter that we're going into, and that's partly due to macroeconomic conditions, but also I think there's just been, and I don't necessarily specifically work in fintech, but a lot of tech overvaluation, right? That's finally having a bit of a reckoning in terms of the real value that's the way that they run their business. So I think that is, that's the talk of why we're coming into this winter, including in the healthcare space, because healthcare has been absolutely hot investment space, especially coming after COVID. But, you know, at least the way our minds work is that the good ideas are still going to have opportunities to be invested in. So I don't think people should worry too much about, you know, a scarcity of resourcing, and I need to then, you know, be kind of wild with my approach. I mean, I probably get 50 emails a week of just unsolicited requests, and 99.9% of them are totally generic and haven't done any research at all. And I can't even tell what specifically they're asking for. So I can tell people are just getting a little bit, you know, irrational in that sense. So I guess, you know, first point is fear not that, you know, the good ideas will still find investment, but be kind of still targeted and you know, strategic with the approach that you're taking. I think secondly, you know, there's a lot of ways to finance, right? Especially in places like Singapore, we see a lot of great government programs that people can tap into. Some of them require some equity give up, but not all of them. So there's many different ways you can finance like that. You know, interest rates are getting a little bit higher, but debt financing is also fully possible depending on the business model. And sometimes I talk to startups and you know, really try to understand why they're even trying to take on investment, because they may already be revenue generating. So there's, you know, there's so many considerations like this before you just take on an investor and have to give up part of your company. Obviously, there's some you know, some advice you can get from investors, but it doesn't necessarily mean. I think some people have this kind of mentality that, oh, now I need to do Series A, I need to do Series B, and they kind of get caught in the hype cycle versus, you know, just some more traditional financial thinking. But like I said, for us, it's very simple. Honestly, we look at tech and talent. Those are basically the two things we're mostly focused on. For any investment, we never expect that the company has both, but we would never invest in a company that has neither. So, you know, is it a good tech where we can help augment the team, work with companies like Roche to augment that? Is it a really good team with a good idea, but they need some help on the tech front? You know, that's where we like to get involved. But, you know, we probably wouldn't get involved in those that we don't believe in the tech, and also the team doesn't seem to be the right one to work with.
Any more?
I think I'll just keep it to one more question. So from your experience, what are 3 fundamental things that a healthcare startup should think about when trying to drive adoption in Asia? So for example, clinician network.
Start, I guess. 3 things, yeah. Solve a real problem. Yeah, because that's going to drive the development of a product that someone will buy, right? Then agree, you've got to work with a clinician KOL that will champion the work. Unfortunately, healthcare just works the way it is, right? Even if you have a great tech, but you don't have like a KOL to help you champion, because many of the protocols in the clinic is sort of like cleared and signed off by some clinician, some consultant that would champion the work. Similarly, if you're applying for a grant, the government grant, it's usually championed by a healthcare professional who believes that that's going to provide healthcare outcome. And I guess last but not least, ensure talent, right? Make sure you have the right people on board the team to provide that solution you say you're going to provide, because no matter how great your pitch is, but once you get on the ground and you start doing that, providing that solution to healthcare, it is quite obvious if you can or cannot do it. So again, as I said, sometimes funding doesn't solve these questions. You really have to work on crystallizing the team you need to provide the solution. Yeah.
Sure. Sorry, the question was. Okay. Yeah, maybe not 3, but maybe I'll try and think of something specific to be actionable. So I think one of the key things is that healthcare, and when we look at it from a primary, secondary, or tertiary healthcare perspective, there are many gaps and areas that are still very nascent, particularly so in Asia as well. And we've got great companies like MatchBuy looks at, you know, how can we be more proactive? Companies like ourselves that tries to drive a more specific focus towards mental health care. There hasn't been the front and center aspect on that front there. So I think there are from a very general perspective, there's a lot of pockets of opportunity that hasn't been done in Asia, that have been done successfully in other parts of the world. It can't be one-to-one replicated in Asia just because there's a lot of cultural and different nuances in the healthcare systems, and many other factors as well. But how can you pull out those key factors and replicate them or build a better version that's built for Asia itself? So I think there are many pockets from very, very acute care to more upstream towards proactive support as well. It's finding a spot that has a proven need and actually driving that activity towards bridging the gap as well. Some things do take a good amount of effort from education, from a societal level, from government efforts, initiatives. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the key things I would probably say. Yeah.
Well, firstly, I think asking for 3 things is cheating a bit, but but I can offer one thing, right? I think be really, really cognizant that healthcare is complex, right? In fact, I was just talking to Pauline about the differences between the US healthcare system and Singapore's healthcare system, and how do you get your solution paid for, right? It's like super complicated, and it's very, very different, right? And it's just like trying to get paid for it, right? Not even like where the pain points might lie. And I mean, for instance, in the US, like there's the self-insured system, and there's Medicare, and there's private insurers. And so I think being very mindful that healthcare is really, really complex, and having an appreciation to actually do the hard work of understanding and navigating the value stream and the ecosystem in each healthcare market is absolutely key. And of course, what you later find is that there's certainly no one size fits all. Yeah, I think that's my one takeaway. Just be mindful that it's so different, so complex. Do the homework.
I'll just add on to that before I hand it to Chris, because that point I completely agree. I think sometimes startups, when they write to us, they present to us a lot of like clinical evidences, but there's really lack in terms of the commercial evidences, right? Who's going to pay for it? What's the evidence around there? You know, when we look at clinical adoption, the readiness of the healthcare ecosystem, I think these are the things that we also learned over the last 2 years through our program. And this is where we want to see how might we really build the right evidences in that space, because you may have the best clinical evidences, but if the clinicians just don't use and don't pay, and whoever the payers is, right, then this is where, you know, we really can't commercialize. So that's one thing that I wanted to share before I then pass on to Chris for his thoughts.
All right, 3 things for me then. So I think one, there are those startups in healthcare that we work with that see regulation, and it's along the lines of what these guys are saying about understanding healthcare for what it is. There are those startups that see regulation as something they need to get around, and there are those startups that see healthcare, the regulation as tasks they need to achieve to be part of the journey, right? So, you know, we only work with those that are taking regulation as tasks they need to do, not just trying to get around them. So I think, you know, if you really want to be successful in the healthcare space, take that part seriously. The second thing is an approach that I would call frenemies. So know who are your customers, know who are your enemies, look how they change over time. Maybe you end up, your enemy becomes your customer or partner, and be creative in that sense, right? I mean, since COVID, there's so many players stepping up to the table: food delivery companies, transport companies, banks that are all dabbling in healthcare now, media companies. So there's a lot of potential there for who you could work with. And then the last thing, I think the most common kind of just thing that I have to tell startups a lot is really just focus, right? I mean, oftentimes there's just trying to do way too many things in way too many different countries. And as I said, sometimes incrementalism in healthcare is perfectly acceptable. So I think focus to me is really a big one. Yeah.
Thanks. So I think we ran out of time already. So wanted to thank the room here and the panelists for joining us today for this discussion. And then feel free to network with us after this session. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone for joining us today, and we have come to the end of our expo. So just a quick reminder for those who would like to connect with our startups, you can scan this QR code and it will lead you to a type form where you can fill in your contact details as well as the startups which you would like to connect with, and we will be in touch after the event. And for those of you who would like to stay on, we're actually having a networking that is happening downstairs at level 1 Providor. So do join us and mingle with the other attendees. So yeah, thanks for coming and have a good evening.